Good morning, and thank you for joining 2021 Connecticut Business Day. I am Lynn Ward, President and CEO of the Waterbury Regional Chamber and President of the Connecticut Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives, also known as CASE. On behalf of the Waterbury Regional Chamber and CASE, I'd like to thank CBIA for hosting Connecticut Business Day and for all of their efforts to help rebuild our great state of Connecticut. CBIA's Rebuilding Connecticut's pledge resonated with our chamber because many of the priorities in our legislative agenda align with supporting workforce development and urban renewal, infrastructure investment, relief for small businesses, and taxpayer return on investment. We enthusiastically signed on to CBIA's Rebuilding Connecticut pledge and encourage you to do the same. As a chamber leader, I'm very proud of my colleagues leading more than 60 chambers in Connecticut. A year ago, as you may have revamped and pivoted your business, we too were faced with many challenges. Chamber leaders were forced to reduce their staff and quickly learn new ways to serve our businesses in a virtual world and become a resource for our communities. In other words, do more with less with no government funding. Thank you to the companies that are members of CBIA and your local chamber. Your participation and investment is greatly appreciated. I invite chambers that are participating today to show their participation by indicating that they're here in the chat feature. Joining us now is CBIA President and CEO, Chris Depentima. And Chris, I want to thank you for taking an active role to work with so many chambers on their local and regional efforts. Thank you again, Chris.
Thanks, Lynn. Good morning. Great to see you, and good morning to everybody. Welcome to the 2021 Virtual Business Day, our first one. Back on July 15th, before officially starting at CBIA, I was very fortunate enough to attend my first Connecticut Association of Chambers of Commerce Executives call and watch Lynn's leadership firsthand, as well as the great partnership between the Connecticut Chambers and CBIA. And those of you who know me know that I'm a huge advocate of collaboration, and the CACCE meetings are exactly that. Lynn and all the chamber leaders have been very supportive of CBIA and me personally since joining in August. And I can't thank you all enough for that. You really made me feel comfortable and felt welcome at the table. As many of us have been reading, it's been 1 year since COVID descended upon us. And the onset of the pandemic has three defining moments for me personally. The first was being at a facility that I was managing back in January and February in Kirkland, Washington, when the first United States COVID case was discovered, and then being there when an outbreak occurred at a nearby nursing home. That made the virus feel very real for me as we scrambled to keep our employees in Kirkland, Washington safe. Until then, it was just something that was happening overseas and not here in America. Another defining moment for me was returning with my family from our vacation on March 15th, a year ago yesterday, and landing in a very empty Bradley Airport, driving on a very empty I-91, and then stopping in a very empty grocery store in hopes of getting cleaning supplies and toilet paper. It was a very surreal time. The third defining moment for me was in between those two events. It was last year's Business Day on March 4th. Before the event started, I recall shaking hands with several attendees and then meeting up in the hallway with Joe Brennan, my predecessor, and Josh Cabal, Connecticut's Chief Operating Officer. At the time, Josh offered me an elbow bump in lieu of a handshake. I was a little surprised, but earlier that week, we had a few suspected COVID cases in Connecticut, and cases were already confirmed around us in New York and Rhode Island. Connecticut's first official case would be announced 2 days later. And that business day was also the first public announcement of Joe Brennan's intention to retire. Needless to say, it was a memorable day, as I have not shaken a hand since March 4th. And the commitment of Joe, Josh, the governor, who we'll hear from in a little bit, and many others to steer Connecticut, our businesses and residents through the pandemic since then has been truly extraordinary. The last year has tested our stamina, our willpower, our inner fortitude, and much, much more. Instead of running from this challenge, though, Connecticut has met it head on, turning adversity into opportunity. And addressing the health crisis, we return to our spot as a leader in the country and the world when it comes to the public-private collaboration, resilience, innovation, or some like to call it Harry Yankee ingenuity. And I think we've even surprised ourselves, or at least a part of ourselves that sometimes walked with our head down, disappointed from the missed opportunities and past policy mistakes. I'm very grateful to the leadership that we saw from the business community this past year. From the manufacturers retooling production lines, to making urgently needed PPE and medical equipment, to the tens of millions of dollars in time and resources businesses poured back into their communities, that innovation, collaboration, and caring are Connecticut's hallmarks. And now is the time to capitalize on that momentum and address the economic crisis and recovery with those same trademarks. Our response to the public health emergency is among the best in the country. Now it's critical that we enact policies that ensure that our economic recovery is also among the best in the country. As the governor says, we need to change the narrative. We need to move away from policies that drive away our businesses, jobs, and individuals. And we need to now embrace policies that nurture economic growth and competitiveness. So as we say at CBIA, and as Lynn mentioned, we can rebuild a reimagined Connecticut stronger and better than before. I hope you all feel the same way too. Let me close by acknowledging that this year's Connecticut Business Day was made possible through the generosity of AT&T with additional support from DoorDash, two great CBIA members. And with us today, no stranger to the state capitol and the world of public policy, is our good friend Joan Emra, the president of AT&T New England and past member of CBIA Board of Directors. John, good morning. Great to see you.
Good morning, Chris. Great to see you too. And thanks for giving us the opportunity to sponsor Connecticut Business Day. It always is one of our favorite days. So I have the honor this morning as a sponsor of really playing two important roles. The first, I always joke, is to understand as a sponsor that nobody really wants to hear from you. And the second more important role is to introduce Governor Lamont. And I thought I would do that not by sort of going through his bio, because I think we all know the governor so well now, particularly after the events of the last year, but to really talk about my own personal experiences with him as our chief executive. He is the fifth governor who I have had the opportunity to work with in some form or fashion in my career. And I can tell you he is fundamentally different than the previous four. I could not really ask for a more approachable governor, somebody whose door is frankly always open, who is always willing to listen to other opinions. And I always say that while we may not always agree with the decisions he makes, we appreciate the opportunity to have to speak with him, to give him our point of view, and to have him frankly listen and interact with us. So I think that's a really, really important thing. The second thing I'll mention, I think that makes him really different. And I think this is, that first part is reflective in the second part is, I got to see sort of what happened, what the six states in New England did in terms of reacting and responding to the pandemic. And Governor Lamont, I think while he did work with the other governors in this region and did so very successfully, he also very much took his own path too. If you look and see, Connecticut really managed to keep much of its economy humming, from manufacturing to telecommunications, to also other sorts of sectors, including financial services. He understood that really it's very, very simple to close down an economy and not so simple to get it started up. So I think he did a really good job, as good a job as he could under trying circumstances, of making sure that the economy did keep running as well as it could under some really, really challenging times. And I think that really bodes well for what CBIA's future is all about, right? Which is how do we rebuild the state and rebuild the economy? And I think we do it through public-private partnerships. And I think the governor knows that and appreciates it. So with that, I'm happy to turn it over to Governor Lamont and wish you all a wonderful day. Thanks so much.
All right, John, we're waiting for the governor to come in, so we're going to have to stretch it for a little bit here. And thanks to the chambers who are posting in chat that they are here, and it's great to see everybody. We're supposed to have the governor with us very shortly. I know someone dropped in the agenda real quick. We really tried to focus hard on the content today that would help support what we've been doing at CBIA, what John mentioned, what Lynn mentioned with the Rebuilding Connecticut policy, and what we have going on in the session right now. In today's agenda, you're going to see a variety of things, but they're really focused on educating all of us that are on the call today and helping us in our call to action. So after the governor's remarks, as soon as he joins us, we're going to move to a legislative panel. And this is the legislators who signed our Rebuild Connecticut policy pledge for supporting the 2021 policy priorities. And And we want to hear from them, what do they see in those priorities are important? What are we doing in the session right now to move those priorities forward across the goal line? And what chance do we have of ultimate success when the session ends in June? In addition, there will be a panel that is really interesting for us, and that's the Grassroots Outreach panel, which Joan and AT&T have been a force behind helping us coordinate, as well as DoorDash, as I mentioned, a member of CBIA earlier. And this panel is of real interest because, as Lynn has heard me talk to her, and Joe Brennan has reminded me that in talking to the chambers, CBIA and all of our great businesses can do a ton of advocacy at the Capitol or via Zoom in this virtual environment. But what's critical, we hear from legislators, is that the business community speak up, residents of Connecticut speak up when it comes time to support legislation or oppose it. And so you'll be hearing from a great Grassroots panel. So we have the governor with us now. Governor, Joan just did a great introduction of you, and we look forward to your remarks.
What do you say?
Good to see you again, Governor.
Hey, good morning, everybody. And Chris, you're not missing a beat. You are everywhere. So CBIA, you have a strong advocate there, Chris. Let me just give you a quick review of where I think we are right now, and I'm happy to stick around a little bit. First and foremost, I think you know where we are in COVID. The numbers have been stable, pretty good. The most vulnerable in our population have been vaccinated or will be vaccinated over the next, less than a week. That's people over the age of 55, where 95% of the complications and fatalities are. And that's why we feel confident that on Friday we can open things up in the sense of our restaurants and retail establishments at 100%. Again, continuing to urge and say, wear the mask when you're in close company. This is not Texas or Mississippi, but we think we can open safely. And those protocols could change over a period of time, as well. The other big thing is, that's happening is the federal stimulus bill that's coming through. What that's going to mean in terms of, for me, number one priority is our schools. We've got 150,000 kids who have not been in school over the last 9 months. Let's face it, we've had more of our schools open. They're all open, virtually all open for full time. Some are still hybrid in the high school area. Our job now is to get the kids who are reluctant back into school, just like their parents who are reluctant to get them vaccinated. And the heart of what we're going to do with our money, and here I could use your help, is start the school year up again in July. Not necessarily in the classroom, STEM. I mean, things that kids can do that are fun, socializing, get them back in the game. And a lot of that's going to be tied to, internships and workforce and summer camps. And here I'd ask you to, think broadly out loud in terms of how perhaps you can get kids introduced to sort of what you do at your business and make that part of their learning going forward. My feeling in terms of a lot of the bills that you hear being negotiated and debated in the Capitol. Look, first of all, tell all your members, relax a little bit. There are hundreds of bills and everyone gets a hearing. What happens from there is complicated, but very few get through the maze. My feeling, which is we don't need, higher taxes. I know, New York and some other places are pushing that way hard. I know there's some interest in the legislature, but you got to remember that whatever you think of the stimulus bill, it's about $10 billion to the state of Connecticut. Most of that in terms of direct payments, the $1,400, the unemployment with the $300 true up, less than $600, which is where it was last year. What that means in terms of the child tax care credit, which I think is really good. I hope that actually survives. I think that makes a big difference for these families. That's going to make an enormous difference, I think, in our economy. I think our economy is like a coiled spring. I think it could snap back pretty quickly over the course of the next, 3-6 months. I had dinner with the president of JetBlue the other day. He's surprised at how fast travelers are getting back. These are, mainly for vacation, but still coming back. And so with that, I'd urge, you to tell, stay cautious at the workplace. It's still really important. My biggest worry now is the variant that's coming through New York City. It looks like the vaccines are working, but they did spike up a little bit over the last few days. Spike is the wrong word, trended up a little bit. So that's the one worry I've got, but I really believe that we're getting through this, and we're going to have a pretty good spring, summer is my hope. Other big things in the legislature, we've got some plans out there to hold down healthcare costs, not necessarily by some public option, but ways that we can reduce costs, which is the underlying driver for healthcare costs. I know what that means for your small business. The stimulus money also provides significant subsidies on the exchange. Whatever you think about the exchange, it will bring down healthcare costs dramatically for small business and working families as needed. And there'll be one or two additional players on the exchange who looks like will represent a 10 to 15% savings for small business as well. So I think that's an extraordinary positive. One thing that's a little more contentious as usual is I still have to figure out how to pay for our transportation fund. Over the last 20 years, they borrowed a lot of money, the transportation fund, often to good purpose, don't get me wrong, but all of our gasoline tax revenues are going to pay off, past due, bonded expenses, a little bit like the state of Connecticut. And it looks like with Mayor Pete and what's coming out of the Department of Transportation, I think on a bipartisan basis, I hope there will be a significant transportation bill coming forward. And for us to be able to pay our 20% share of that, we do have to show a recurring revenue to do it. So I know it's not that popular with a lot of the folks there, but we do have the TCI plan out there, which is capped at 5 cents at the wholesale level. That would raise about $90 million for us, as well as for the big tractor trailer trucks. Don't let them tell you it's the small local delivery. Big tractor trailer trucks, the highway user fees, similar to what our neighboring state, New York, and others are doing. So it's a way that we could raise a little bit of money that makes us best advantage to speed up transportation, speed up our commute, and continue to fix our roads and bridges. That's my one ask. If you can figure out, if you could find ways to support that. It's never easy in the legislature, right? Oh my God, there must be another way to do it. I've explored every other way. And I think this makes the most sense, but I don't want to leave you on that. I want to leave you with the fact that I think the Connecticut economy is strong. Our budget is strong. I think we're going to continue to make a big effort to get people back to work. You should know, in closing, that the other big thing we're getting out of this federal money is childcare and daycare. And Beth Bai work hard working with Chris and the CBIA, how we can help you in terms of childcare to help you get people back to work, get those restaurants back at 100% capacity. And, for the near term, we can pay for that. So these are all reasons that I'm optimistic. I hope you're optimistic, and I appreciate all the good work that CBIA does.
Governor, thanks for those remarks and really for the inspiration. I've been talking to your team and I'm hearing from the business community. It's been a year now, Governor, and I think we're all a little worn down. Probably no one more than you, so to your credit, and I appreciate the inspiring remarks. We're close, right, Governor? I mean, as you had a big change yesterday, pulling forward the vaccine rollout to Friday for age 45 up, and then saying, hey, come April, everyone who can will be able to get the vaccine. That's an inspirational sign. Would you say, Governor, we're pretty close to the other side of this tunnel?
I'd say we're in the ninth inning. I'm a baseball fan. Know a lot of games are won and lost in the ninth inning, but if we stick to our strategy, I think you're going to find June's a pretty nice month.
And as John said in his opening remarks, Governor, kudos to you and the team for the pivot to the age base. It's obviously, you had the data, you had the science that said it seemed easier, it was working well with the earlier groups. Yeah, some in the business community were probably like, we've been preparing for this and now you're making a change. But honestly, as we told your group, it was the right move at the right time, and it seems to be working. It doesn't seem to be working. It is working very well, as evidenced by the pull-up.
I think that's true, Chris. Other states are doing it right now. It really focuses on public health, like I said. And because it's simpler, it's a lot less open to the games that are going on elsewhere, and I think it's fairer. And not to remove the fact that we have to go after the underserved population to make sure that everybody gets vaccinated.
Yeah, anything we can do to get that message out. Governor, we have a few questions for you. I know we got you for a few minutes here. Let's start maybe with some bad news and then work our way positive to some good news, because there is a lot of good news here in Connecticut. But last week, we had a revised job number released on Friday that showed that we actually lost about 20,000 more jobs in 2020 than our ending number. And this isn't unusual. The numbers always get revised as clean data comes in. Does that change your strategy at all for this session, the economic strategy that you rolled out, the budget strategy?
I don't think it does, Chris. I think there may be a blip in the numbers. Here's what you got to know, that in terms of GDP, we have much more of our economy open, and we always have, than all of our peer states. And that's helped our income tax, it's stabilized our sales tax. So from a budget point of view, we're in good shape. Where we got hit, let's face it, is in the service economy. That's restaurants, hospitality. That impacts unemployment. That I care about deeply. So that's why A, opening up at 100%, B, childcare and other ways we can help people, make it easier for them to get back to work. You know, see what we got in terms of work share. If you can't afford to hire that person full-time, bring them back half-time and we'll pay the other half. We, meaning the state and the feds, ways to get people back to work.
Yeah, and as you mentioned in your remarks, Governor, there may be another positive here too, and that is this kind of pent-up travel that you talked about. The sector that we probably expected to be the last to come out, the lagging sector, is the commercial aerospace sector, which is a big sector in Connecticut, as I think everyone on this call knows. And you know, the early forecast was maybe no recovery to 23 or 2024. And now there's some numbers saying there's an incredible amount of pent-up demand for at least personal travel that may see an earlier recovery of commercial aerospace manufacturing, commercial travel in general. And you had the conversation.
Yeah, no, that's great news for Pratt & Whitney jet engines and Bradley Airport, and showing that our, you know, we're getting back in the game. For all those kids coming back from spring break in Fort Lauderdale on the beaches, slow down just a little bit, or make sure if you're feeling bad or get vaccinated, I'd be a priority.
Agree, Governor. Governor, another question over here is you talked about the American Rescue Act that the president signed in the billions of dollars, $10 billion that Connecticut will get in a variety of ways. The state getting, I believe, $2.7 billion directly. Our education, our schools getting $1.1 billion. You have priorities for that funding, and are you concerned that some may just see it as a license to spend, found money on the street, and let's go crazy with it?
Yeah, I am. The easiest thing I can do is here's the state and local. Come in, give us your list of all the favored groups you've got in your town. We have 169 different strategies, and I think this is money that, if properly invested, and thankfully, Chris, we don't have to do it by the end of this calendar year or something, which would have been disastrous. They gave us 2 years for education, 3 years for the state municipal. So we have time to make a transformative difference. And it would be a tragedy. And if we found $1.9 trillion at the end of year 2, you said, what'd you get for it? It was frivoled away. So we're going to work really closely with legislators. We're going to work very closely with superintendents and mayors, but put in place, I'd like to think, a statewide strategy, how childcare works with workforce development, works with apprenticeship programs at our community colleges, getting people back to work, do something that makes a long-term difference.
And Governor, we support one of your major strategies for it that you rolled out before the funds even came available, but obviously you had some insight, and that's using it to fund the out-year deficits, if you will, keep the rainy day fund intact, continue with the surplus of the rainy day fund, which allows us to pay down our long-term liabilities, which in our surveying of members is always the number one concern the business community has, is how are we going to fund these long-term liabilities that are hanging overhead. So we're right there with you, Governor. If there's anything we could do to advocate for the use of the fund, obviously aside from economic growth, we'd all just like to see massive economic growth that funds the out-year deficits that we have, which are much lower than originally planned. So if anything we could do to help you, is that still your strategy? Use some of those federal funds for the out-year budget, keep the rainy day fund intact?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, we put in place a budget that assumed for the next 2 fiscal years, the next one starting on July 1, that without having any broad-based tax increases, we could continue to provide all the key social services that are more necessary than ever without a tax increase. And we just figured, we have a rainy day fund, well over $3 billion today. So that was our backstop. We're not going to have to use that because of the money we're getting from the feds that will, and if I was business, one of the things I like, outside of just cutting all the taxes, at least some predictability and stability. And I think that is what I can assure you right now, that over the next, foreseeable future, which for me is 2 or 3 years, you know what you're going to get. You're right, though. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We still have enormous unfunded, liabilities. That's debt as well as pension. But, for the first time in history, we're putting money back into the pension fund. Last year, a little bit. This end of this fiscal year, hundreds of millions of dollars. We got a long way to go, but at least it sets a direction.
Yeah, and we've been saying, Governor, and we hear from the business community, and I know you were there, and I would both in private sector as well. Uncertainty is the enemy of business. So if that's the enemy, then certainty is the friend of business, and that's great. That predictability is key. Governor, we've emphasized a number of key themes in our Rebuilding Connecticut policy campaign, which are now our policy priorities for 2021. We're going to have a legislative panel after you talk about why they supported those policy priorities and signed the policy pledge. And one of those is greater collaboration between the public and private sector, something that you really seem to embrace. I'm a big fan of collaboration as well. What role do you see businesses playing in the recovery?
Oh, I think, look, as you remember, Chris, back when everything was closing down last spring, at the same time, we set up our reopening committee. And I had, ingenuity and business leaders, many of whom probably are here at the front table saying, we want to start getting things open. How do we do it safely? If I'm going to open up a restaurant, give us your best idea of how we can do that safely. And Chris, we were aligned. I mean, if you're a restaurant owner, you want to do it in a way that your employees know so they can come back and feel like they're safe, or otherwise they wouldn't come back. Your customers, the same thing. So going forward, like I said before, I think workforce development, coupled with daycare, coupled with our apprenticeship programs, everything we can do to work together. I want to work with CBIA. I want to work with you. I want to work with Joan and Kevin and Kerry and some of the legislators I see on this to make sure we come up with a long-term strategy that gets Connecticut back to work. Because you want to know how we solve a lot of our long-standing long-term fiscal issues, growth.
Yeah, no doubt. And having those many voices at the table, Governor, something you clearly seem to embrace. It gives you different perspective. You have that rustle, if you will, that tumble of opinions, and it's not disagreeing to disagree. It's disagreeing to come up with the best solution. And really, we've been applauding you. I know the chambers have been applauding you and your administration for not only accessibility, but that embracing of the public-private partnership. We've been trying to push the great stories of our businesses in Connecticut out at CBIA, and I know the chambers have been partnering with us on that to really let the residents and the lawmakers, some still, I think, see businesses as the enemy, and really educating the lawmakers and the residents about the great things the businesses do, not just creating jobs, but all they do for the communities, whether it's sponsoring their sports league or food bank or soup kitchens, internships, apprenticeship, as you mentioned, Governor, scholarships. Our businesses are there, and we saw them during COVID. So credit to you and the administration for really.
Hey, to a lot of you guys, we were scrambling for a PPE, remember, about a year ago, just desperate for it. And there was no stockpile at Washington. And I'm calling China. And I got to tell you, it was a lot of businesses said, hey, we have an extra 1,000 masks, so we're going to help you out. So the frontline healthcare workers get support. People are extraordinarily generous.
It's great to see. That's the heart of Connecticut. That's what we're going to capitalize on. Did it to get through the pandemic recovery, and now we're going to capitalize on that for our economic recovery. Governor, one thing we've been seeing, I'll say more on the negative side, is a lot of conversation in session about some labor bills, and mostly from the Labor Committee. And some of them are, really I don't want to say business, but just anti-competitiveness, anti-embracing what we've just been talking about, nurturing our businesses so that we can grow the economy. Especially at a time when businesses have been struggling. Are you concerned with keeping the legislator focused on the recovery?
Oh, no, absolutely. I'm not, you got to be a little more specific on what those bills are, but I think you'll hear from the legislative panel in a minute. We go through a lot of hoops. And like I said, every bill has a champion, and you get your day in the sun. But then you go through a compromise. You have, moderates and liberals and progressives getting together saying what does make the best difference for the long term. And I think a lot of these things do get weeded out. So again, I just urge your members, don't worry about that particular headline. See how it sorts out. But again, I would ask the legislative panel, because they'll give you a pretty good insight into what has legs and what doesn't. I think you know
Okay.
where I stand, though, which is doing everything we can to get our economy moving again.
We'll certainly do that, Governor. Yeah, there's been some bills expanding workers' comp liabilities, restricting background checks, and we'll make sure we talk to the legislator about that. It's as you've been saying, we need to change the narrative. It's the year of the Connecticut comeback, and we need to make sure that happens. And you're absolutely right about the bills. I mean, we're not trying to, as you know, we're trying to be very optimistic and positive in the future of Connecticut. And it is highlighting some of these potentially harmful bills, but you're absolutely right. More than 2,500 bills were dropped during the session at a time when we were supposed to have less bills, not more. And everyone gets their day in the sun, but hopefully only a very few come out, and only the ones that come out are the more positive ones, supportive of growth. And to that point, Governor, is the public option. You talked about lowering healthcare costs. We surveyed our membership, and 97% said we need to lower healthcare costs. The National Association of Manufacturers recently released their fourth quarter survey. I think it was last week, and healthcare cost concerns were near the top of the concerns that the national manufacturers had. So very similar to what we see in Connecticut. We are, as you know, are concerned about the public option proposal. We need to lower healthcare costs. We don't think that's the way to do it. Concerns around the transparency of the state-run healthcare, lack of regulatory oversight, things like that. What's your position on public option? You talk a little bit about reinsurance and other ways to lower healthcare costs.
Yeah, I mean, what I've said on, quote, the public option is, you don't want the taxpayers subsidizing, and you don't want the taxpayers underwriting a lot of the risk there. We've been underwriting pensions and debt and stuff for a long time, and that's not the way to go. You'll have Kerry Wood on a little bit. She'll really be able to give you the insights there. I challenged the health insurance community. I said, we're the insurance capital of the world. Come up with creative ideas to bring down the cost for small business. Those healthcare costs were crushing me. I had a couple hundred people in my business. Those numbers were going up relentlessly, and it was just you had to keep paying that. So I think we're going to have some plans on there that are going to reduce costs. B, we can talk a little bit about how we try and do a better job of reducing the rate of increase in drug costs. And C, I think you're seeing some real efforts to come up with preferred networks. So let's say in the case of state employees, they don't go just anywhere, some of which are 3 times more expensive to get that same procedure as somewhere else. We'll give you an incentive to go to places that are less cost. These are the type of creative ideas we have. And you're right, we're looking at the reinsurance as well as one way that we can bring down costs, on the exchange. What you really ought to know is there'll be a dramatic decrease in costs on the exchange, really thanks to some of the subsidies you see coming out of the stimulus bill.
Yeah, and as you said, Governor, we have great minds here in Connecticut when it comes to health insurance and healthcare in general. And so back to the public-private partnership, right? Let's leverage that, and let's figure out the best solutions to lower it. Governor, in addition to public option, one of the other things that's getting, I'll say, a lot of attention, certainly yesterday it got a lot of press as well, and has been, is the potential statewide property tax. Some people calling it a mansion tax to help fund our cities. There's concerns around that from a variety of individuals. I don't think many people feel a $350,000 house is a mansion, especially since our real estate finally in Connecticut has been growing, which is what individual residents want to see: personal income growth, property value growth. Any thoughts that you have on a statewide property tax increase?
I don't support it. I don't think it's going anywhere, and I don't think we need it. And we are going to be able to do a good job of holding down property taxes, or even better, around the state, with a lot of the municipal aids, coming through to people. And Chris, as you point out, look, it's for the first, we've been losing population, our small towns, our schools have been depopulating. This has gone on for, a decade. And last year of all things, we started up more businesses than we had before, at least on paper. And B, we had 50,000 people move to the state of Connecticut. And not all old guys like me. I mean, young people with young families and entrepreneurs who wanted to start up businesses. That makes a big difference in terms of bringing our towns and cities to life. We don't need more taxes. We need more taxpayers, as I've said 100 times. And that made a difference on our budget as well. I don't want to step in the way of that momentum.
Absolutely, Governor. It's what we've all been kind of complaining about for 10, 15, 20 years, maybe longer, right? Is that the businesses left, the jobs left, the individuals left, whether they were tied to those jobs or for some other reason. And finally, this last year, we saw individual growth. We saw record number of business startups, 40,000 growth, I think 22,000 net business startups in Connecticut. Taxpayer base expansion, as you talk about, growing the base, not growing the amount of taxes. And as a result, we pivoted from a deficit this year to a surplus, and we lowered the deficits in the out years. That was part of it, not the only reason. And that's why we embrace policies. As we say in the business community, it's not just supporting policies that grow the businesses for the businesses. It's for every resident of Connecticut. They want to see personal income growth. They want to see job opportunities so that they can have a career and grow. And then they want to see real estate growth. And we've seen those three things, Governor, and appreciate you emphasizing that we need to capitalize on them. And certainly the statewide property tax is not the way to do it. Governor, let's crystal ball it here if you can. This time next year, you're back at Business Day. Hope we're in person. Hopefully we're back to normal. You're addressing the big crowd over in the LOB. And either tell us what you think the economy will look like 12 months from now, or what do you want it to look like? You close your eyes, what do you envision Connecticut looking like 12 months from now?
Oh, I believe that a year from now will be in even better shape. I think, you'll know where our budget is, and we have fiscal stability where you've got a lot of unanswered questions in some of our neighboring states. So people taking a second look at the state of Connecticut. I think from a lifestyle point of view, a lot of people, hey, my kid, I want to be in the big millennial city where it's all happening. Well, maybe that was true 5 years ago. It's a lot less true today. I think you're going to continue to see a trend, I believe, of people moving out here. That means for your businesses, makes it easier to find, talent that you can get to work. My job is to make sure that talent is got the training they need to fit the needs of each and every one of you. And I'll be particularly proud when I'm able to say all of our kids are back in school. And we made a big effort. It's all about the kids to get them back in the game. We worked hard over the last year, and I'd like to think they're catching up, and they got a sunnier future too.
Well, we look forward to working with you, Governor, and making that vision happen. Thanks for your time today. Hopefully we will see you soon in a packed Yard Goat Stadium, Dunkin' Donuts Stadium, maybe throwing out the first pitch after we've all been vaccinated and we're back to full capacity. So thanks for everything you've done the past year. Thanks for supporting the business community, CBIA, the chambers, and everyone. We know it's been a long year, and we're almost at the end, Governor, so we appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, great. Yeah, you and I, we're going to go to Yard Goats together. I'm looking forward to that. And each and every one of you, thank you. And thank you for being champions for the state of Connecticut. I mean, you can't have one person sales job here. And nobody has better credibility about where this state is going than each and every one of you. You all have associates or partners or supply chain out of state. Tell them to rethink and come on over. We need them here in Connecticut. Thanks, everybody.
Very well. All right, we're going to turn it over to the legislative panel that I was talking about in the Rebuild Connecticut priorities. So Eric Gjede, our VP of Policy here at CBIA, who hopefully many of you know, leading the cause and our champion of for this session, is going to kick us off. Eric, good morning. Great to see you.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris. Happy Business Day to all of you who are attending today. We really appreciate you being here to celebrate with us. It is my honor to introduce a panel of wonderful legislators that have joined us here today, all of whom have been strong advocates for not only Connecticut, but for the business community. Now, before I do that, I just want to remind you all that this panel is meant to be interactive. So please submit any questions you have for our panelists using the Q&A function right in the middle of your screen, and we will get those asked of the panelists. And so now, without further ado, I would like to introduce to you first Senator Joan Hartley of the 15th Senate District, representing the towns of Waterbury, Middlebury, and Naugatuck. She is the chair of the Commerce Committee, vice chair of the Appropriations Committee, and also serves on the Banking Committee, Legislative Nominations, Legislative Management, and Regulation Review. Also with us is Senator Kevin Whitgose of the 8th Senate District, representing Avon, Barkhamsted, Colebrook, Granby, Heartland, Harwington, New Hartford, Norfolk, Simsbury, Torrington, and most importantly, Canton, Connecticut. He is the ranking member on the General Law Committee, the Higher Education Committee, and also serves, he's also a ranking member on the Internship Committee and serves on the Finance Committee. Also with us today is Representative Carrie Wood of the 29th House District, representing Newington, Rocky Hill, and Weathersfield. She is the chair of the Insurance Committee, also serving on the Commerce and Finance Committee, and more recently, chair of the Moderate Blue Dog Democratic Caucus. And last but certainly not least, Representative Holly Cheeseman of the 37th House District, representing the towns of East Lyme and Salem. And she is the ranking member on the Finance Committee and also serves on the Energy Committee and General Law. Good morning to you all. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I want to start with the first question. There's one thing that you all have in common that Chris alluded to earlier. All of you signed early this past fall CBIA's Rebuilding Connecticut pledge. Now, this is something that was supported, as Lynn Ward mentioned earlier today, by more than 60 chambers and trade organizations across the state, and we really appreciate your support as well. And in fact, we had some lawmakers who signed on this pledge despite having never signed a pledge in their entire career. I'm going to start with Senator Hartley, and I want to ask all of you, why did you choose to support this pledge? Go ahead, Senator. Oh, you're on mute, I'm sorry.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Good morning, all, and it's a delight to be with you. As the governor said, maybe next year we'll all be in the same room together. Looking really forward to that. Yeah, so I'm one of those legislators who has never signed a questionnaire or anything of the like. And I will say that I was probably the last person to turn it in. Because I just typically don't sign on to those things because in this business, things are not black and white. And so when you sign on to a particular questionnaire or the like, it always evolves and there are changes. And so I feel like things are so organic that it isn't appropriate. Why did I sign on to this one this year? Well, because I think that this is an unusual time, and first and foremost, it is about coming together and rebuilding better and stronger. And I think that this state has that opportunity uniquely, that there are some real silver linings here to the COVID situation we find ourselves in. And so I signed on because, I'm very engaged, as I have been in the past, but I wanted it to be so noted. Don't know if I'm going to sign on the next one, Eric, but I did this one.
Well, we appreciate that very much, and your points are well taken. It was about making Connecticut come together. Senator Whitgose, same question to you. What was it about the pledge that made you that led you to your support?
Well, good morning, Eric, and good morning, everyone. I think it's important as policymakers that we publicly stand up and support our businesses and do so in a pledge. And in this year in particular, similar to Senator Hartley, a lot of your businesses may have been closed by government edict. And as we saw, tens of thousands of our residents try to navigate through the Department of Labor because they were out of money, but they still had a job, while albeit may have been temporarily shut down. And we still have businesses that are closed because of state government. Because of the pandemic. And I think that the items that CBIA supports and says that these are the initiatives that we need to, and policies we need to embrace to make our businesses stronger, is something that as legislators, we really need to get behind. Because as Governor Lamont had said, we need to grow our economy, and growing our economy is to grow jobs, keeping the jobs, and put more people on the tax rolls. And that's something I absolutely support. And that's why I signed the pledge.
We appreciate that, Senator. Representative Wood, why did you sign on to the Rebuild Connecticut pledge?
Thanks, Eric. Good morning. Yeah, I mean, I echo the sentiments that my colleagues have just said. Getting out of COVID really should be about investing in Connecticut and how we move our state forward. There's a couple things on there that in particular really are important to me. First is streamlining the permitting and approval process on our Commerce Committee led by Senator Joan Hartley. We have been working with agencies here in the state to streamline that process. And really what that means when we're successful in doing that is more shovels in the ground and cranes in the air. And, I say to my constituents and colleagues all the time, where is there a crane currently in Connecticut? Because I see one, and it's a DOT crane working on an overpass in Hartford. I mean, we really need to get more shovels in the ground and cranes in the air. The P3, component, I'm a huge fan of looking outside the box. It's not always the state that should be having to make these, investments as we move forward, working with our local businesses, working with, all the tools and resources that we have here to find the solutions to move our state forward. I've worked on many successful P3 projects, and I believe that is the way for our future, especially when it comes to, high-speed rail, any, infrastructure projects. We're really going to need to work with the private sector. So.
Absolutely. And then Representative Cheeseman, same question to you. Why did you support the Rebuild Connecticut pledge?
For me, Eric, it was really a no-brainer. As you've said, as the governor said, we don't improve the lives of people in Connecticut by cutting an ever-shrinking pie into smaller and smaller pieces. We need to grow that pie. The way that we grow that pie is to enable businesses to succeed, to create the environment in which they can succeed. And with looking at, some of your priorities, workforce development. Again, we've got a great exemplar in my part of the state with the Eastern Workforce Investment Board, the manufacturing pipeline, these high-skilled jobs of the future that don't necessarily require a four-year degree, but those apprenticeships, you look at the development going on at Electric Boat and places like that. The licensure reform, I've worked with that with Senator Witkos in general law. The governor's had a bill. If we are having people move to this state and want to continue their trades and careers, we should make it easy for them. The idea that Connecticut is the only state in the nation that has electricians that know how to wire a house without it exploding seems to me crazy and somewhat elitist. Taxpayer RI as well. If we're going to invest the taxpayers' money, we should be good stewards, and we should make sure those investments are going to return the kind of, things we want to see. And running a business, every day you get up, you put everything on the line. My late husband used to say, until you sign the front of the check instead of the back, you don't get it. And I believe businesses are not evil robber barons. They are men and women of all walks of life who've made the biggest bet in some ways in the world to start a business, to hire people, to give back to their community. And that's why, for me, it was easy to sign the pledge.
Well, I'm sure the hundreds of businesses that are watching today really appreciate those comments, Representative Cheeseman, and couldn't agree with you more. Starting with you again, Representative Cheeseman, I know we're getting sort of near the end of the committee process for some of the B committees. I know the budgeting committees and some of the A committees are still going strong for a little while longer. Could you talk about maybe one or two items that you've been working on that you're particularly excited about?
Well, I mentioned the licensure reform. I hope very much we can get that through general law this year. I think that's really important, particularly for our military spouses. DoD is now looking at how states treat that when they're looking at things like BRAC and investment. On the finance committee, one of the bills that I really like and I think would help businesses would provide a tax credit for the cost of building alterations and infrastructure changes you've made to respond to the COVID. I know, wearing my other hat as executive director of the Niantic Children's Museum, we've invested about $15,000 in upgraded HVAC. Now we're a nonprofit. On the other hand, my good friend Senator Formica, I know, has spent a fortune upgrading his restaurant. So I think that would be important. Something, R&D tax credit for biotechs, extending that. So I think those would help business. And again, reforming the unemployment insurance trust fund. I know we have a public hearing tomorrow looking at that. I don't have to tell businesses that that really needs fixing, because we could see very, very bad after effects of this virus if we continue to go down this road.
Yeah, I really appreciate those comments. You hit a number of items in the pledge points. And of course, unemployment reform is something that CBIA has been working on for years. I certainly hope that they take a little bit more of a balanced approach than what is going to be before the Finance Committee tomorrow. Representative Wood, how about you? What are some of the items that you've been working on that you're particularly excited about?
Yeah, just following up on what the governor was talking about in terms of health insurance, making sure there's more products for the small group market, that 50 and under market in Connecticut. The costs are extremely high, and it also, there's just not a lot of options out there for that market. So making sure there's additional products. I think the captive insurance bill that we're working on is something everyone can keep their eye on. Basically, it offers tax amnesty and streamlines the, reporting process and things like that to make it, a better place to do business here in Connecticut. And what's great about growing the captive insurance market here is that, they love coming to Connecticut because we have the talented workforce already in place here. Through our insurance industry. So we're looking at, hundreds of jobs there and dozens of businesses that have already put Connecticut on their radar. So very, very excited about all that stuff happening on insurance and real estate.
Thank you very much. And Senator Whitcombs, some of the items that you're working on?
Sure. 2 years ago, we rewrote the liquor statutes, and we were able to modernize those, and we saw what happened with our brewery industry. It just blossomed and exploded. And this year in general law, we're tackling the home improvement contractor section of our statutes, going to streamline that, make that more business friendly, do away with some of the requirements that we have that we believe is an impediment to businesses. Looking at reciprocity, as Representative Cheeseman had said, micro-credentialing in higher education, so we can start tracking where our students are working with. Very excited about, and this is the governor's initiative, was the Office of Workforce Development, where he's looking at creating an office which will work with businesses to see what they need, specific to skill sets for workers, and working with our private institutions and our colleges to make sure that we can align our workforce for tomorrow ready when they're able to graduate. So those are some things, and there's a lot of other small little things, but I say small, but in the scope of things, it's a business-friendly thing. For example, exempting any workforce development you do from the sales tax if you bring in somebody to train your folks, putting in a tax credit again for apprenticeship programs, things like that. I think that will go a long way and send the right signal to our business community that we're on your side.
Certainly appreciate that. And Senator Hartley, what are some of the things that you've been working on that you're excited about? Oh, Senator, you're on mute.
I was just protecting from my dog. So I heard Chris mention in the beginning of the session about the number of bills that are in the pipeline. And yes, it is true, there are an extraordinary number of bills, but we are now in the place where we're starting to pare those down and prioritize. And so also in the Commerce Committee, we have been about the business of doing that. And we want the ones that are going to be most impactful to be what we get across the finish line. We have put forward, and it was just in last week's meeting, a bill 711 actually, which is speaking directly to small business, in particular those sectors that have been hardest hit to once give them a shield from the exponential increased cost that they will experience on the UI, on the experience rating related to COVID. In addition to that, there is also a section in that bill which will create an exemption for sales tax on PPE. The thought being, why would we, the state, be profiting from increased revenue in this pandemic when we are all about trying to get workers back on the job and in a protective and safe way. Also, there is a piece in that bill, 711, which continues the work that this committee has been focused on, and that is regulatory reform, which is creating in the promulgation of regulations that there be a comparison with federal regulations, so that if we are, for example, beyond a federal reg, we're going to highlight and understand the reason why and try to assess the necessity. Do we need to be more rigorous on a particular regulation than some, if there is a federal regulation? So we use that as a barometer to measure. We are also, as you know, work with the Manufacturing Caucus very closely and have over more recent sessions been able to really move some significant pieces of legislation forward, one of which was the enacting of the CMO, the Chief Manufacturing Officer, which could not have been more precipitous in terms of the amount of time that we got that person in place to when this pandemic hit. So in continuing to focus on the manufacturing sector and supporting it, we will be advancing a bill to bring together a working group to identify the technology in the digitization of manufacturing 4.0, so that we have identified for manufacturers the how to, where to go, and to help them bring this industrial revolution onto their particular shop floor. Also, tourism is a big part of our conversation in commerce, because that is an important part of the economic sectors in the state of Connecticut, and they have been slammed, as we know. So we are trying to put together some legislation to promote them. Also, recognizing the fact that because there was the revenue was flat on the hotel tax, to try to keep them whole, so that, as the governor talks about, this coil that is about ready to spring, that all sectors are up and running, and that we can really exponentially move forward as these lights are going on.
Senator, I know you have a limited amount of time. You're incredibly busy doing the people's business. So I'm going to ask you one last question before you go, but I also just want to remind everyone who is tuning in right now, please don't forget to submit your question using the Q&A function. We'd like to get to those in just a few moments. So Senator, before you go, one final question for you. We have been hearing some very loud voices calling for the addition of new taxes and labor mandates on the state job creators. And we've also heard a lot of people saying, no, we need to hold the line right now. Now is not the time. Where are you in terms of whether we should be adding new labor mandates and taxes? Are we with the add-on right now, or are you a hold the line group? And what do you say to the people on the other side?
Well, I say that we are in a very precarious moment right now, and we best not misstep. And so I think that Connecticut is poised to really have a great benefit from where we are right now. Previously we were always in competition between the big metropolitan areas, and all of a sudden that has been totally blunted. No longer do employers or employees want to be as a first choice in the stack and pack kind of environment where, they are traveling in very congested ways on metro and the like, and that they are in high rises. That speaks to us uniquely in Connecticut. And so we need to work with DECD, we need to work with Advanced CT and come together and market ourselves. The numbers of families that have moved into the state are incredible. And, they go from 22,000 to, I don't have the most recent numbers. And so these families are choosing to come here. These businesses will find their talent here. We now have this new remote economy that is not going to leave us. It will change and we will go back to normal, but we are going to have this remote economy. And so people can work from anywhere. This is a very attractive state for our quality of life, our education, our skilled workforce. We have to capitalize on this right now. The way to do that is to create certainty, is not to have any onerous revenue streams that are being brought about now. So it's about capitalizing on this moment and not creating new mandates, and also being very clever about the federal stimulus money that's going to come in. Use it in a way that is going to have multiplier effects as opposed to drawing it down. So I'm about putting the lights on and capitalizing on this moment that is before the state.
Absolutely. So, we have a real opportunity right now. We just need to tread very carefully, is what you're saying. Is that correct?
I would say that's probably the best way to sum it up. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Senator. Senator Witkos, where are you? Are you hold the line or more labor and tax mandates?
Well, I'll tell you that I was kind of surprised when we opened up the legislative session remotely, that I thought we were going to kind of constrain the bill proposals to things that had to do with COVID and public health emergencies. But much to my surprise, or maybe not surprise, it was business as usual. The legislature, I think there were over 4,000 bills that were introduced on any given year when we're in person. Maybe 400 make it through the pipeline. But we have to remember that we probably will not be in our building or your building, the people's building, to finish our session. So it's going to be a finite number of bills that make it all the way through. And I'm hoping that the bills that make it through are the pro-business bills. I'm actually, Eric, pushing the line back a little bit, not holding the line, but pushing it back, making ourselves more business friendly, streamlining things, reciprocity, removing barriers to employment, things like that. So I think, then there are proposals out there, and I hope we can get those over the finish line. But now is in the future is not the time to be adding more regulations, burdensome regulations to business, or increasing taxes on the citizens and the businesses of our state.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Senator. Representative Wood, same question, although I think you've made some headlines recently that would probably indicate where you are on that spectrum. So go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Senator Hartley and Senator Witkos said. I really came into this session thinking that our focus should be on keeping people safe, getting kids back to school, getting our handle on COVID, and reinvesting in Connecticut. I was also very surprised with the tax proposals that kind of have dominated the headlines here. So that's where I am on this, but I will say that property tax reform needs to be a priority. I take full responsibility for not having those discussions this session. I plan on getting a working group together and working all through the summer and fall and coming in next year with a strategy. I know in all of our districts, it is unsustainable the way it is going, and we do need to get a handle on property taxes. It's just in 10 years from now, we wouldn't be able to afford to live in our homes. I mean, the way things are going. So we do need to reform our tax structure, starting with our property taxes. The other thing, I've noticed in how we do business at the legislature is if we came forward with a tax reduction, for example, Terry Wood and I, she's a colleague from Darien, we proposed phasing out the estate tax and gift tax over 5 years. Now, how we work in the legislature is that has a fiscal note. And so that tax policy then goes to the finance committee that says, well, it's going to cost $20 million, $100 million for you to phase out these taxes. Well, all of us know up here that that is a policy decision that has a return on investment. New York State right now is increasing their estate and gift tax. So that policy decision could, in effect, draw more people to Connecticut to live. And we don't calculate that when we propose tax reductions. So I'd like to talk about calculating a return on investment when we propose reductions in taxes. Because right now, all we do is tack a fiscal note onto that and say, well, we can't, afford that. Where is that money going to come from? And that's really not the case. We lower taxes, there's a return on investment. So I think that should be part of our decision making. I think that's also something we should look at. So those are where I stand.
Perfect. And of course, Representative Cheeseman, where do you stand? And this is critically important since you are the ranking member of the Finance Committee.
Yes. Well, first of all, am I the only one who finds it incredibly ironic that it took a pandemic to get people to move back into Connecticut? And I hear everyone celebrating this fact, but as we recognize that remote work has changed how we work, changed the need to commute, when I look at particularly Senate Bill 821 and House Bill 6187 that put huge increases on those higher income earners, New Jersey's highest rate is 10.75%. That doesn't kick in until I think you're making $5 million. The bills yesterday proposed that we have, I think it's a 12.7% for couples making more than $1 million. Just as people moved here for safety, for more room, we put forward these kind of tax increases. All of a sudden, New Jersey and New York, those suburbs in Westchester, though, I used to live in New Jersey, northern New Jersey, Essex County, don't look so bad. So as we go forward, let's bear in mind the very things that attracted people to Connecticut. Great schools, beautiful shoreline, all those things. If we all of a sudden start taxing people much more than our neighbors, they can easily sell those nice houses and go back. They don't need to be in one spot, as we've discussed. So I think at this point, everybody needs to take a deep breath. We don't know in the long term how the after effects of the pandemic are going to play out, and not do anything that might stop the momentum of drawing people to this state, drawing business to this state, and getting us on the road to recovery, both from a physical health point of view, a spiritual point of view, and an economic point of view. So long way of saying, no, I don't think this is the time we should be increasing taxes. We should be doing everything we can to stabilize our economy and plan for the future.
One question is, we are, and I know you've all mentioned some of the more harmful tax proposals and some of the other harmful proposals that are out there. Are there any in particular that you are concerned about that seem to have a little bit more momentum that maybe you had thought? Why don't we start with you again, Representative Cheeseman?
There have been so many things that have been put forward, and I think, like my colleagues here, I was disappointed that we were not focusing in a laser-like way on the COVID recovery. And this is just my personal point of view. I think the move to legalize retail marijuana is misguided. I think we've seen, records, substance abuse deaths. We've seen that this is not your grandmother's pot, huge THC levels. We hear, oh, this is a way to, for criminal justice reform. I have no problem with expunging, if we're looking at a judicial equity piece, I'm happy to work with that. We heard a lot about how Yale doesn't contribute as much as they should. Fine, they've got a great law school. Put them to work helping people who've been unfairly treated by the criminal justice system to get their records clean. But as we grow this skilled manufacturing economy, these jobs of the future, do we really want to legalize a substance where 1 in 10 of the people who use it become addicted? And if you're under 18, 1 in 6. So that's very personal for me. some of the other ones, yes, I think we, there's a real appetite for, healthcare reform. That public option sounds really attractive to people, but how in the real world is this going to play out? So those are two in particular that about which I'm concerned.
Well, we certainly join your concern about some of those items. Representative Wood, how about you? What are you concerned about?
Just to kind of counter what Representative Cheeseman was saying, kids are smoking marijuana or ingesting it now. What legalization does is it cleans up the supply. It is regulated by the state, and I would rather have us control the substance that's out there than have kids buy something that has one little flake of fentanyl in it and make that poor choice and die. So I do think that we need to pursue the legalization process, and we can have that debate, some other time. That's just where I stand on that. But regarding the public option, I'll just have everyone know that we had a debate on this last Thursday, and the public option bill that was put forward, sent to the Finance Committee, is something that we can be proud of. I mean, it's not going to fall on the backs of the taxpayers. It has much more transparency. It is now under the scrutiny of a full audit. Consumer protections were greatly strengthened. It's regulated by the Department of Insurance. So the public option is just what it is. It is another option for small businesses and nonprofits to look at to buy health insurance. So all of those concerns about risk and drawing from the general fund and adversely affecting our budget are gone. So I will just say that I'm very proud of the amendment that I put forward, and I'd ask everyone to just take a deeper look at that. And please feel free to talk to me offline. The tax policies that concern me, a lot we heard in the Finance Committee yesterday. I think that putting a tax on homes that mainly the middle class own right now is not something that I would be looking towards. But I will just leave everyone with the thought that the equity issue is alive. It exists. If you grow up in a city in this state versus suburb, you have a very different life. And I think we need to address that and make that a priority and make sure that the opportunities for education and job training are the same across the board. So, equity is going to be, a theme this session, and it's going to be a theme, I think, for the rest of our lives until we solve this issue. And I am definitely going to be working, to make sure Connecticut cities do have the best opportunity, do have, great, strong schools and great businesses. So I will be making that a priority.
We certainly appreciate that, Representative Wood, and certainly appreciate some of the things you've done on the public option. And we're just amazed at some of the pushback you've gotten for simply calling for a level playing field and a little bit more government transparency where there has been so little. So thank you for that. Senator Witkos, what are some of the things that have, or some of the items that have concerned you?
One of the items that concerns me, although I don't think it's going to get anywhere this year, but it puts it on the radar, is last year or 2 years ago when we increased the minimum wage, we indexed that. That was the argument for a living wage. And yesterday in the Finance Committee, we heard that we should be having a fair wage, which is $20 an hour, which I thought was concerning that folks were arguing for that already. We hadn't even maxed out to our $15 an hour. So that is a concern to me. The other concern is a rebuttable presumption for COVID, that if you have COVID, you're deemed to have gotten it in the workplace, which I think is quite onerous to put that on a business. But two of the issues that I have some concerns with, that I think have some legs this year, we'll be watching, and to be honest with you, I'll be fighting immensely, are zoning issues that are being heard by the Planning and Development Committee. It's basically overriding local control over or different type of zoning laws. So I have some deep concerns over that. And the governor's TCI, which would put he doesn't call it a tax, but I'm going to call it a tax on gasoline, which is a direct cost to businesses and to every motorist here in the state of Connecticut. I think that has some legs. So we're going to see how that shakes out as it moves through the legislative process.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Senator. Senator, we'll stick with you for this next one. I know we're getting pretty close to our end time, but I think we can sneak one or two more in. You know, we have had some of our own members at CBIA come to us and say that they just don't think that their email or their call to their legislators will have any sort of impact. Have you ever changed your position on a bill based on something you've heard from a constituent? And you know, what if yes, you know, what are the best ways for the folks who are attending here today to get in touch with you?
Well, we all have our you know, we're all working remotely, so I think getting an email to us or calling. But if the public hearings are still going on, you have the opportunity to testify. You really should. That is the most impactful. Sending an email is great, but you want to be able to have a dialogue with all the legislators that are on that committee. And I will tell you, the only, I think, silver lining in all of this COVID is that I think the public has had a more opportunity to testify than they had before in the past, because people can do so from the comfort of their office or their living room. And finance, there were 330 people yesterday. On higher ed, the other day, we had 109 people testifying, and there's no way they would have sat in the hearing room at the legislative office building for that entire time. But some of the great ideas come from that. And I'll give you one example. There was a businessman that testified on a bill in general law, and he makes chocolates, confections in the state of Connecticut. And he said, yes, well, how come we don't allow the infusion of alcohol to be sold in there as something that's usually sold during you know, holidays or gifts and things. And none of the committee members were even aware of that. So we created some language, and it's in a bill now. So, you know, you can change minds. And it's, I think the closer you can bring to realistic type scenarios and how it impacts your business, your employees, and the lives of people in Connecticut, make that much more difference than a, you know, standard email or, but don't send form emails. I mean, that's one thing. If you belong to a trade association and they say, send this to your legislator. Well, once you've read one, you don't need to read 400 of them. And when folks say, oh, I never got a reply back from my senator or my representative. Well, because our mailboxes were inundated with the exact same message, other than a name change on the bottom. So make it, you know, spend a few minutes and make it unique to your situation and how it impacts you and those around you. But again, if there's a bill up before public hearing, it's so easy to sign up to testify. Do so in public, because that really has the most impact, I believe.
Yeah, and Senator, I think that's a great point, and certainly a great tip on the form letters. You know, personalization, it always helps. But you know, what do you say, or how can a business that can't sit up there for 10 hours for their 3 minutes to testify, how can they better get in touch with you or better make their point? Any tips for that?
Well, we try to hold office hours when we can. I'm always willing, if you leave a message saying, I need to talk to you, I'll call you back. It may not be for a couple of days, but you know, we'll get back to you on a particular issue, because we're here to represent you all. And we can't do that without having that two-way communication. And it's so important because we all come from so many different backgrounds that you're the experts in your field, and you bring the nuances to light that we may not be aware of. And as policymakers that are making laws that impact your businesses, we really should be aware of that. So we always want to keep the dialogue open.
Thank you very much, Senator. Representative Wood, what would you add to that?
I love when business owners and businesses reach out and ask me to come visit, come get a tour. You know, let's sit down, let's talk about the issue. That is very impactful. If we can't do that right now because of COVID, a phone call works best. I have actually grabbed experts in industry to work on a lot of the stuff that my committee has been doing. And, you know, it really helps because, you know, these business owners are boots on the ground and living and breathing it, you know, every day. So, you know, you may get wrangled into drafting policy, you know, you never know. So I would say that our phone numbers, our cell phone numbers, our office numbers, our emails are posted everywhere. And I absolutely welcome that one-on-one discussion. It goes really far. It goes a long way. And we need to hear from you. You know, we really need you to reach out to us and let us know where you stand on these things, if it positively or adversely affects your business.
That's a really great point. And Representative Cheeseman, what would you add to that?
Well, I think they've covered most things. I agree with Senator Whitco's, those, and you, Eric, those form emails. And very often it's not even personalized. It's dear legislator, and then it says signed your name. You don't tend to take those as seriously, particularly when you receive 60 or 70 of them. But again, I think it's important for everybody here to remember, whether you're a business owner, whether you're a constituent, we can't know what's on your mind unless you tell us. And I make a point, even during COVID, of trying to be approachable. We're just like you. We get up in the morning, was you put your pants on one leg at a time or your pantyhose or whatever. The only thing we have that's different, that we have the ability to take the things you tell us and maybe improve an environment, address, a problem. My cash bill, that would basically permit any Connecticut residents to use cash in a business transaction, came to me because of a mom who said, my daughter was somewhere and she tried to pay cash and they said, no, we only take cards. I heard a lot about it during the pandemic. Oh, I paid and they wanted me to take a gift card in exchange. But that interaction, we need to know what's on your minds. And those great suggestions, Senator Whitco's mentioned, selling alcohol infused chocolate, all those little things, from that to putting, flashing lights on ice cream trucks because a child was killed. All those things only happen because you as a constituent, you as a business, reach out to us and say, hey, this would make my life better, or this would right something I think that's going wrong. So we're here. We're here to do your business. We may not always agree, but we can't even have the conversation about where we think the state should be going if you're not talking to us.
Well, what a perfect reminder, Representative Cheeseman. So thank you so much for that. And I know we are coming up on our stop point in just a few minutes. And to all of those who submitted questions, both in advance and during the panel here, really appreciate those. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them. We will certainly follow up with you. Why don't we just end with some closing remarks for each of you? Just your final thoughts on Business Day and the rest of the session going forward. And why don't we start with you, Senator Whitcos?
I just want to thank all the attendees that are here today, and thank you for all that you do. You're not only job creators, adding to the tax base here in the state of Connecticut, but you give so much to the communities that you reside in, and your employees do. And I think oftentimes people forget that you're the go-tos for sponsoring Little Leagues and any other charitable organizations in your group, in your town, and in the state. And I think that goes a long way to be good corporate citizens. And we need to remember that here at the state capitol. Thank you for being vigilant. Stay on target with your state rep and your state senators. I mean, you got to reach out, because if they don't hear from you, and to be honest with you, sometimes if you get 20 emails or 20 phone calls, legislators consider that a lot. So, have your employees call, you have your wife or husband call, your partner. But if there's something that you either support or you hate, you got to reach out and educate your state representative and your state senator. And I want to, again, thank you for having me here this morning.
Appreciate that. Representative Wood.
We're working on some amazing legislation this session that is pro-business. We're working on grants for businesses that are looking to reinvest coming out of COVID, expanding workforce training, streamlining the permitting and approval process, and so many other things that are beneficial. Let us know how we can continue to help you and continue to work with you. And I know that our economy is going to boom. I can already feel it. I work in commercial real estate. I have been busier than ever. This is going to be a great year. So let's make sure we do the best we can in reinvesting in Connecticut.
Well, that's great news. Really appreciate that. And Representative Cheeseman.
Thank you. Thank you for being here this morning. And now I have a request for you. As we build a Connecticut that's truly inclusive, I want the businesses to be engaged. We talk about skilled manufacturing. Capital investment in our technical schools is very hard. What's to stop a group of you getting together and adopting a technical high school who needs CNC machines, What's to stop you from mentoring in our cities? Every child who doesn't read at grade level by grade 3, that child has a terrible future. And maybe we look at some way to incentive, whether we look at tax credits, but we all need to be engaged in building an inclusive, successful Connecticut for everybody, whether they're in Greenwich or Griswold or Fairfield or Franklin or Bridgeport or Branford. So we can do this, but we need your help as well. And that's my message to you all. This is a joint effort to raise everybody's boat, but the businesses need to engage as well in this process as we go forward, because we can do it if we do it together, because at the end of the day, we do want the same thing. We want a vibrant, successful Connecticut for everybody living here. And that's my message to you today. And thank you so much for everything you do, because it ain't easy.
And that's a great note, Representative. This is truly a partnership between lawmakers and the business communities, because at the end of the day, so many of us want the exact same thing, which is the best possible Connecticut with a booming economy that lifts all people across the state. So with that, I want to thank each and one of you. Senator Joan Hartley, really appreciate you being here today. Senator Witkos, thank you. Representative Kerry Wood and Representative Holly Cheeseman. Thanks you all today for celebrating Business Day to us. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Eric. That was fantastic. It was really great to hear from the legislators about their alignment with our priorities to rebuild Connecticut. And I know our team dropped a link relative to the Moderate Blue Dog Caucus. We've been saying for a while that a working group of bipartisan moderate legislators is imperative, absolutely imperative to Connecticut's economic success. And whether that means voting against bad labor bills or calling for more transparency on state-run health plans, lowering taxes, or anything else, we applaud those moderate legislators who've been even more vocal this year. Please, please keep it up. As I mentioned during the opening, I'm very excited for this next panel and hope you are all as well. When joining CBIA last summer, my predecessor and mentor and general great person, Joe Brennan, told me early and often that no matter how much our lobbyists advocate at the Capitol, it will only make a difference if it's accompanied by strong grassroots movement, where business leaders and residents engage and make legislators hear their voices. And you just heard directly from the legislative panel how critical that direct outreach from you to policymakers is. I've had many discussions with individuals, businesses, our great chambers of commerce that have joined us today, and associations that I've met since coming on board in August, calling on each of them to be a partner. Where CBIA leads the advocacy and those organizations coordinate the grassroots outreach. I've always been a big believer that you can't ask someone to do something without giving them the proper tools. And to help us understand what good outreach and engagement means, please welcome Pam Staneski, the Executive Director of the Milford Regional Chamber of Commerce and former member of the State House, who joined by a panel of grassroots specialists. We heard from both the governor and the legislative panel that Connecticut has an incredible opportunity in front of us this session, and we cannot squander it. So please listen in and share your questions with the panel using the Q&A feature so that you can all be involved as the legislators encourage you to. Pam, I turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Chris. What a wonderful segue into what we're going to be doing during this next 45 minutes. It was interesting to hear from all of our legislators about that they want you to talk to them. They want you to connect with them. And chambers of commerce do that. We connect business to community and community to business. And so what Representative Holly Cheeseman said at the end when she was talking about businesses being engaged, I'm hoping that you will hear from us while they were telling you, please call us, please call us. You're going to hear from 3 wonderful panelists about how you do call them, how you do approach our legislators, and how if you are doing something at a group effort on an issue, you don't send those form letters and you personalize it. And how to communicate with those. Quite honestly, I can say it because I was not one, but I knew a few stubborn legislators who just wouldn't answer your calls. We have 3 wonderful panelists joining us. We have Joseph Eyer. He's the Vice President of AT&T Public Affairs. And in his present position as Vice President of Public Affairs and Constituency Relationships, he's responsible for implementing strategy and messaging regarding AT&T's key public policy issues. And let's face it, everything we talk to our legislators about is key public policy issues to us. We also have Kelly Memphis. She's a senior manager of government relations and stakeholder engagement practice. And she is the council's manager of that, where she oversees programs and networks that help members leverage best practices in government relations at the federal, state, and local levels. And I also like that she worked on the National Lieutenant Governors Association, the National Conference of State Legislators. I was part of that National Conference of State Legislators, Kelly, and actually made a difference in making sure that policy was heard, good policy, good comments from businesses and specific industry. I know you worked in the healthcare industry. Sarah Locke-Henderson joins us. She's the East Coast public engagement person for the third-party food delivery company. And we all have used them in this time with the pandemic, DoorDash. She joined DoorDash in April of 2020 to help grow their grassroots and community mobilization function, and did that as well with Lyft over on the other coast, the coast we don't talk about. You know, chambers are about connecting community to business and business to community, as I said. These three people are going to give you the tools that will help you do what your legislators were asking you to do in the last session. So I'd like to begin with you, Joe, if that's okay, and ask you, what is the best way to approach legislators and elected officials? How should our businesses leader engage with them, and especially with the change in times? And then we'll go to Kelly, and we'll go from there to Sarah.
Great, thanks, Pam, and good morning. Thanks so much to CBIA for inviting me and for allowing me to appear on this panel with my colleagues, and look forward to hearing. I have a lot of personal experience with DoorDash, so I'm anxious to hear about that. I also want to thank my colleague John Emra, who is our leader in Connecticut. AT&T is blessed to have a lot of great state leaders. John is right up there among the best of them, so I'm delighted to be with him and have him as such a great and helpful, supportive colleague for some of the work we do at the federal level. You know, as I listened in on the previous panel, I mean, they really laid it out for you, and right down to getting calls on their own cell phones. We don't encourage our employees or our stakeholders to call state legislators on their cell phones. But that said, the notion of personalizing and really specializing your message. You heard it repeatedly from the different state lawmakers that joined us. You know, the notion of taking your story, the jobs you create on Main Street, the kind of philanthropic work you do for each of your communities, but really personalizing them and tying them to your direct targeted lawmaker. That is the best possible way to communicate with a state legislator. I'm all for the various and really sometimes very effective technological avenues that we have that everybody uses this to kind of speak through. But there is no substitute for in-person narrative storytelling to make your case for something that affects your family's bottom line, your business bottom line. And I think it's the most effective. I would also say one of the representatives talked about site visits. That's something we do a lot of. We'll bring a state lawmaker or a member of Congress to one of our sites. It's a great way to show off our employees, their talents, our diversity, kind of the impact that we're making in those communities. Site visits to your business, site visits where subject matter experts are available to speak directly to the issue at hand. Really one of our go-to and tried and true methods that we rely on repeatedly. Looking forward to getting back to them post-COVID.
Pam, I think you're on mute.
Thank you, Kelly.
I was afraid I just did that whole thing on mute, so I'm glad I did.
You did not, and I did not realize that I was on mute when I was telling Kelly to unmute.
Not a Zoom webinar until you say the bingo phrase, you know, that's one of them.
We should have done that. We should have had a bingo. Yes. And you get access to your legislator without having to go through any of this if you win, right? So Kelly, you are very familiar with one-on-one, but also just group efforts with this. And Zoom is one way that we can connect, but it really is a hard thing for our businesses that are out there doing their job. Can you explain a little bit real life examples of how people can get their business needs met and heard through legislation, through meeting with legislators and through having them understand what their policies are that they support?
Sure. So I guess, of course, when you're thinking through all these questions and best practices, we kind of have two versions. One is before, and then one is now during COVID. So I actually want to start out maybe by sharing a couple of facts that I think might be helpful to keep in mind. So the Public Affairs Council is, for those who may not know, which is probably most people, it's the membership association for anybody in the government relations and advocacy space from across the country. We have over 700 members that are all these different organizations that, are corporations, associations, businesses that are kind of doing this full time. So some things I find interesting is that we do surveys of these people. So people who just really are spending all their days thinking about advocacy. And we did do a survey where over 70%, up to 80, depending on whether they were saying mostly agree or strongly agree, of government relations professionals think that some of these virtual tools that we've been using during the pandemic are going to remain even after the pandemic is passed. So as Joseph said, being in person, I could give you so many stories about how being in person was so valuable and helped so much. For example, one time I was in Washington State and we were trying to get a bill introduced, and a cardiologist that I was there with ran into someone from his church who was a legislator. And she was like, "Oh, why are you here? Come tell me." And then she became, one of the passionate sponsors and champions of that bill because she agreed with it. But we never were going to meet with her unless that we ran into her in person because we didn't have any of her constituents with us. So a lot of that is being lost, and I think a lot of that will come back once the pandemic is over. But I think the video meetings that we're seeing, I think this ability of connecting, of it being acceptable to try to connect via Zoom instead of having to drive all the way to the Capitol, I think a lot of those things that we're seeing now are going to continue. And I think that's a really good thing because it increases the accessibility. So, a lot of what you just said, Pam, that it is hard for people who are in the middle of running businesses to maybe, try to find a time to do a virtual meeting, but it's maybe even harder for them to find a time to drive to the state capitol to do in-person meetings. So the reason I start out by sharing all of this is to say that the best practices that you can try to learn during this time are not just, a temporary skill. I think they are a skill that is going to remain in the long term. So learning how to do things like, having good lighting so that you stand out more and maybe you seem a little easier to pay attention to, or good sound, or, good framing, all these type of little skills, I think are going to continue to be an important part of the advocacy picture as you go forward. So to your question about the example, Pam, back to your original question, I think a good example of someone who's been really successful in this field, because again, as I mentioned, in my role as the Public Affairs Council, I get to learn from different organizations across the country, would be the Alzheimer's Association. They have really done these amazing different virtual tools. So they've done town halls where they have been able to really connect with legislators and be able to turn it, instead of just like one-way talking, like, let me just tell you what my issues are, really turning it into a two-way dialogue where they want to learn from the legislator and they want to learn how can they be a resource to that legislator, as well as sharing their views. And they've been doing these like amazing kind of virtual town hall all across the country that have really had some good funding results, where fundings that they needed in that state for people suffering from Alzheimer's has been passed. So I do think that, I don't want to go on forever, so I'll pass it back to Pam for a moment, but I do think that there's a lot of good examples of ways that people have used virtual tools to be as successful as they could have been in person. And again, I do think learning how to do that will be an important tool moving forward, even after, we all hopefully have been vaccinated and gone back to our regular lives. So Pam, I'll pass it back to you. If you have any follow-up questions, please let me know.
We're going to have plenty of follow-up questions for you as we move forward, but I would like to give Sarah an opportunity to weigh in on this question and to talk about just a little bit when we talk about mobilization, and maybe there's an issue that's impacting a small manufacturer here, but it impacts other manufacturers. And DoorDash certainly is a name that we know nationally, probably internationally. You'll correct me on that, Sarah. So I'd like to know a little bit about how you would mobilize a group on just a small issue, because I think that doing it at a larger scale, you could use those same skills at a smaller scale. So Sarah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm really excited to be here and really thank the CBIA for having me. We are international. We're only in Australia and Canada right now, but we're hoping to expand that fairly soon. So mostly the US, but I think it's a great point. I mean, DoorDash, we do work on the federal level, but of course, a lot of our work that we do is really local, not just state, but like municipal and local. And I do think a lot of the same sort of campaign ideology and grassroots philosophy can be applied at like federal engagement level down to the really grassroots local level. I think, you know, echoing the points that Kelly and Joe are making, I think the landscape has changed vastly in the last, you know, year. Being digital, I think, you know, our best practice and one of my best practices is always, you know, emphasizing proactive outreach before you're ever making an ask of a legislator. And I think Joe sort of touched on this. You know, what can you be doing for them? What can you do for their constituents? How are you helping businesses in their district? You know, how are you helping consumers and, you know, on our platform, workers, drivers who drive for us, before you're coming to them saying, hey, you know, can you sponsor this piece of legislation? Or can you help us with this or that legislatively? And I think those kinds of proactive touch points are a little bit harder to do when you're doing them over Zoom, of course. But I do think, you know, there's still, and then, you know, to Kelly's point, there's still ways to do this over Zoom. You know, we've done virtual town halls, being able to attend even events like these or events that are hosted by legislators. So you're coming to them, to their events and supporting things that they're doing as opposed to sort of the other way around, making asks, I think is incredibly important. And then just in terms of some of the sort of tactical things, I think it was a great point that we heard in the session before about personalizing outreach and making sure that, you know, even if you're encouraging your stakeholders to write their legislators or to call, that their stories and their personal, you know, anecdotes and their experiences are really what's being amplified. And I think there are ways, all of these tools, phone to action, you know, we're using a site right now called Countable, which is sort of an advocacy web development site, you know, allowing people to submit selfie videos where they're actually giving video testimonials and talking about their experiences, or writing very personal letters with prompted questions. I think those are really helpful tools to make sure that that advocacy is really personal.
Thank you for that, Sarah. And I do know that several of the questions that are coming in are around those virtual tools, because to all three of your points, it's here and it's going to stay here. And we can't say, oh, I'm sorry, I got caught at the office anymore, because there's really no excuse to not miss a meeting unless you're in another meeting. But I would like to talk a little bit about how we talk about being proactive. And so proactive meaning I'd like to hear from each of you an example of how you maybe started a grassroots campaign, work through it, and in part, how business could work with local agencies to build that grassroots issue that they are wanting to have supported by state and federal delegation. While we're here for State Business Day, we also know, again, anything that we are talking about can be transferred to working with our federal government and federal delegation. So I'm going to mix this up, and we're going to go to Kelly on this, and then Joe, and then Sarah. And Joe, if you want me to call you Joseph, just let me know when you get there, or give me a nod and a wink.
Okay.
So Kelly, you know, a lot of what our businesses do is impacted at the local level, and so they need to have local buy-in, either for local campaigns or for state campaigns. Have you ever worked at that level where you've had to involve your EDC or your planning and zoning or your health department?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll give an example from someone not too far from where everyone is, Vermont. There was a couple years ago when I was working for the American College of Cardiology, and there were a few issues that were coming up in Vermont that we want to work on. So going back to the proactive thing, I would say that once we realized there were issues that we wanted to be addressing in the state, if you have an urgent ask, of course, you know, your legislators are there to hear from you, they're your constituent. But if possible, it's better to try to reach out and build those relationships before your urgent ask comes up. So in the state, there was some tobacco 21 pending legislation, which obviously as cardiology, we would care about that because, you know, raising the age of purchase for tobacco helps your heart health, but it isn't necessarily a primary issue, but there was such a big kind of movement around it. Some of the stakeholders that we would want to work with in that state, such as the American Heart Association, like people who already really had established relationships and, you know, established connections to legislators, cared about those issues. So even though probably a bigger priority for us were some of the prior authorization issues, which really inhibited, you know, doctors' abilities to like move without red tape, tying them down, those type of things, provide that patient care. That was probably a higher priority. But because of the fact that this issue that, was for public good and public health from, I know people find maybe that controversial, but from the perspective of cardiology, it was the public good. So that was the issue that we started out working on. We decided, okay, let's join this effort and see if we can try to help out with that. So I think that's a good example of a way to build legislators, that way build relationships proactively. So we really were able to build relationships with coalitions and stakeholders. The legislators who did support those bills already tended to be ones who might be thinking about heart health and might be willing to listen to some of our other issues. But we really stalled at the state level and found that we needed to go to the local level, and we needed to work with the Department of Health on those issues. So we had a doctor who worked in his local city in Burlington, and he actually started out getting a ballot on the local city level saying that, because sorry, I should back up a little bit. The main reason I was having trouble passing was one legislator in particular said, no, I don't think my constituents want this. I don't want to support this law. And he was like an instrumental vote, so he was blocking it. So we went to the local level and we got a ballot put on the city level, which the city didn't have the power to pass that bill, but the ballot basically said, we, the city of Burlington, want this to be passed at the state level. And it passed so huge, like most people voted for it. And then we had this ballot initiative that was public, and we went back to the legislator and said, well, okay, you said your constituents don't want it, but look, we have a ballot, they do want it. So I think that was an example of being able to use the local level to influence the state level. And then we also ended up working with the Department of Health to get them on board and help them get prepared to pass the regulations we would need around that law. So that was an example of, I think, a success using the local and the state level. We also got the media involved. We had some of our doctors, give interviews on TV, and just really made it be an issue that struck with people at the local and the state level.
Always interesting when you get the media involved, isn't it? It raises the attention of all those elected officials. Joseph, I know you have been involved with working with multiple third-party organizations in your role at AT&T just to get policy initiatives and issues addressed. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then also segueing off of what Kelly said, does AT&T sometimes have to cross industries to get involvement in a bill or a policy that is their initiative? Have you ever worked in that area? Because I think that's important as well.
Yeah, thanks, Pam, and big shout out to the Public Affairs Council. I'm a participant, member, graduate, so appreciate all the work they do. For sure, on your second part of your question, in terms of cross-sector, finding allies in different sectors of the business community, we're doing it as we speak right now. We are already and are going to continue advocating as the federal government really thinks about the most thoughtful and most efficient way to apply federal broadband funds into the economy coming out of COVID to help close the digital divide that's really been laid bare by COVID. We're working with banks and with large retailers like Walmart and Target, and with healthcare. I mean, there's a sector where the pandemic has completely changed kind of what's possible. And largely, I've had regulatory attorneys tell me the advances that have happened in telemedicine over the last 12 months, largely because of one thing, because the Center for Medicare Services enabled Medicare to pay for a doctor when I visit my doctor like this. If I'm a Medicare recipient, I can now get reimbursed, or that doctor will get reimbursed for a telemedicine visit. That would have taken years without the pandemic. So that's a good area. So broadband we see as a key enabler for every part of the economy, healthcare, education. So we're locking arms with not only business, but with civic associations and all types of civic organizations in that regard for something that, like many things, the pandemic has laid bare. To the first part of your question, Pam and John's a much more expert at this than I am at the local level, but tower siting as we move into a 5G universe where the network, the cellular network needs to get densified. So instead of having towers miles apart, they're going to get closer in, and they're going to get the network will densify. So that eventually your autonomous vehicle will know that when a ball rolls in front of the car, that means a kid is going to come next. That's where we're headed. That's going to require a lot of building. And when you talk about deploying a lot of cells into people's neighborhoods and their backyards, that is where you start to deal with, obviously, state legislators, PUCs. So folks, our leaders at the state level, like John, have to deploy really, kind of sophisticated and multi-level fronts to make those cases and demonstrate how those networks are going to make our lives, our jobs, our families, our access to medicine all better. So it's personal, but it's, we're doing that literally in 50 different states, regulated by 50 different regimes. So that's a challenge, but one that we thrive on.
Thank you for that. So it's not just Ma Bell anymore, not at all. But that's actually a good segue into the second part of this that I wanted Sarah to address, and that is, Sarah, you are very good at motivating grassroots efforts, and here we have a group of businesses, and they're working with their local agencies, and they're working with constituents. They're people who work for them. How do they keep them motivated, engaged, so that they can address the issues that are most important to them as small business owners?
Absolutely. I mean, I think sort of to the first question that you asked in this panel, I think a lot of this does have to do with proactive outreach and building trust. Your constituents, your stakeholders, they're not going to take action on an issue, that involves your company or your business if they don't trust you and you haven't built that rapport. And so I do think, in the same way that finding ways to approach legislators before you're making an ask of them is important, finding ways to engaging your stakeholders before you're making asks of them to take action is very important. Building that trust and demonstrating a reciprocal relationship, particularly when you're working with partner groups. We work with nonprofits, we work with advocacy organizations, we have great partnerships with, for example, the NAACP in various states. And we want to show that we're being a good partner as well, that this isn't just, the kind of relationship where we're making asks of groups who have a lot of really important issues that they're dealing with, that we're also being good partners. So I think building trust is one. And then second is how you're talking about your issue. I think messaging is really important. Again, people are not going to engage on an issue that they don't feel relates to them. They want to know why is this issue important to me? So if I'm a small business owner, how is this piece of legislation going to help my business, my revenue, my volume? Or if it's a piece of legislation that's maybe harmful, how is this going to impact my ability to reach customers? If we're working with our workers or our workforce, our drivers on our platform, how is this piece of legislation going to affect my ability to operate autonomously? How is this going to affect my ability to continue working on the platform? I think the way we message things and the way we talk about things, it's really important to make sure they relate to the particular audience that you're talking about. So messaging matters and audience matters. And then finally, I think method of communication really does matter. It's harder in a digital world because we do, I know, and I'm sure Joe and Kelly would agree, we work with stakeholders that do have great access to technology, but we also work with stakeholders who frankly don't have great access to technology, and that, in a non-total digital world is fine. You can do a combination, a hybrid of in-person and digital outreach. I think the challenge right now is trying to find a way to operate in this landscape where pretty much everyone has to be digital. And I can't say we found a perfect solution, but I do think, we ran a large ballot initiative out in California this past election cycle, and all of that campaigning really did happen in a virtual landscape. And there is direct mail, there's phone calls, there's other things that you can do to reach stakeholders. But you do really need to segment out populations as far as who has access to what kinds of messaging and what's going to resonate best with your audiences.
I think you hit a key point there with the messaging piece, because it is important. Sometimes as a small business, you are just working on the work that is your work, and you don't realize that. I always say to a small business that would come to me when I was a legislator, the problem is that there isn't a voter card that says ABC company gets to vote today. It is everyone who works for you and for yourself. And so what I'd like to, I'm going to give a little PSA for chambers, because chambers are absolutely wonderful places to make those local connections And if you're not a member of the chamber or not a member of the CBIA, please consider joining them, go and visit them, because they are the conveners of all of these individual business industries that may cross over and can help each other. And they are all about community and lifting all people. So that kind of takes me to, I'd like to pivot to our next topic. I think you heard me mention at the beginning that we have, sometimes I call them stubborn legislators, those that you just can't get a hold of. And Kelly, you talked about something earlier where you actually were trying to get some legislation passed, and you had one legislator who just was the holdout. And so you put the ballot on a local ballot initiative in Burlington to show that there was big support. How have you handled, and this question is going to go to all three of you, and I'm starting with Kelly, how have you handled that legislator that is aloof, that you cannot find when you go to the State House, that doesn't show up on a virtual call, or always has an excuse for not visiting your town hall, if you will? Thank you.
Sure, that is definitely a tough one and can really be a frustration and a thorn in the flesh for an advocacy effort. I would say Pam kind of highlighted one of the solutions a little bit already, which is I echo what she said, being part of local associations or groups, like trying to plug in with people who give you more power in numbers and can magnify your voice and may actually already have those relationships, can't be underestimated. I would say since the pandemic more than ever, that's a huge trend that I've been seeing is people are really teaming up. So even if it's someone that you wouldn't traditionally be partnered with, if you can partner on one issue, reach out to that person. I had an example recently. There was someone who works for a dog walking app, and she just could not connect with a legislator in New Jersey, and she was trying so hard. So she ended up connecting, no offense, Sarah, but with someone from Uber in that state, which normally, we love DoorDash, of course, but also Uber, who she would normally not have partnered with, because even though they're both app-based, their issues have nothing in common. But in this one case, the issue crossed over. So she kind of looked outside her norm, reached out to someone from this team in Uber, and he did have that relationship with a legislator and was able to connect her. So I think there's an element of trying to, first of all, look around and see, is there someone else who can help you connect with those legislators, even if they're not traditional partner or someone you would have thought about, before. And of course, are there traditional allies already in place, like your chamber, that you can reach out to try to connect with? That's one way of approaching it. Another way of approaching it is trying, again, to be creative about getting the power of numbers. So, can you plan some kind of legislative day where there's multiple people? Can you plan some kind of personalized letter writing or social media campaign, something that makes it harder for that legislator to ignore you because there's multiple people sharing compelling reasons that legislator should connect with you? And then the final third solution I suggest is one I've kind of alluded to a little bit, is looking to alternative paths. There was another state where we were trying to work on pulse ox screening, which is just a little test for newborn babies, but for some reason there was some resistance to it. There was old science that these legislators were looking to and not new science. And one legislator had us stuck. This was in New Hampshire, actually. So eventually we came to a compromise with her where she was like, you know what, if the Department of Health wants to do it, I'll support passing legislation that gives the authority on this issue to the Department of Health. And then my hands will be clear of it, because I just stop bothering me, basically. I don't like it, but you guys are still bothering me. I'm willing to pass that over. So then we were able to connect with the Department of Health, get them on board with the plan. The Department of Health contacted her and said, yes, we would like the power to pass this newborn, screening regulation. And then we went through that path. So if you've exhausted all ways and you just cannot connect with that legislator, look for other paths. Are there other policymakers within the state who can help you accomplish your goal?
That's actually a very good point when you say look for other paths, because I know occasionally legislation will wind up in a committee, and it will then be referred to another committee, and maybe sometimes you need to go to that other committee and get them to approve it before you come back to the original committee. Joe, have you ever had that issue where you've had to jump committees or allies to get somebody on board on one side to get something done on another?
For sure, 100%, both at the state and the federal level. And one of the things, it sounds simple, and maybe it is, but gratitude goes a long way. Once you finally do get that member and to engage, we are big fans of thank you campaigns, and I don't mean billboards or hey, it can be that, but I'm talking about, phones into members to thank them, op-eds into their local publications, thanking them for their leadership, especially if it was something difficult that they did. That may get you to the point where the next time he or she may not be so hard to reach, because as a former lawmaker, Pam, that goes a long way, and it means a lot to folks to have the cover if they did something hard, or just frankly the pat on the back if they did something that was kind of normal course of business. So that is when we're building campaigns, the part after the conclusion and the kind of after action report is always, what are we going to do to thank these members?
Absolutely. And you stole a little bit of my thunder. I was going to have all of you talk about thank you campaigns and how it's important to after you've been up there hounding a legislator or your own delegation to support you on something, that you need to thank them over and over for that support, not because they're looking for the gratitude, but because that will then ensure that they'll listen to you the next time. So Sarah, taking all of that and putting it into kind of a nice, neat package for us with respect to messaging and communication and crossover and thank you campaigns, what's your addition to this?
Well, Joe and Kelly said it all so nicely, but I think I agree with everything that they were, saying. And I think just in terms of when a legislator might be unresponsive, I think it's also important to evaluate how much time you're sort of asking of them. I think that's sort of one of the points that Kelly was making, just being able to capture attention and also be respectful of people's time, and to engage constituents and stakeholders in a way that's attention grabbing, but also doesn't take a ton of that legislator's time. They might, we have limited time and limited interactions with these folks. And so making sure that we're being really concise and figuring out how best to package our asks in a way that's presentable and can be easily digested if someone doesn't have a lot of time is really important. But I do think also when someone's being unresponsive, it's also important to evaluate why. And I think to the point of thank you campaigns, there could be hesitation. I mean, we certainly experience it. I don't think it's any secret. Technology companies, gig economy companies, we have a lot of issues that are really new, and I think that are sometimes a little bit hard for people to wrap their minds around, which isn't a bad thing. It's not surprising. These issues are still sort of being developed or sort of building the plane as it's taking off. And so reassuring legislators through different actions, through engaging their stakeholders, through making sure their stakeholders are thanking them, that we're thanking them, that we're holding receptions after sessions are over and things like that, to continuously engage people and let them know that not only we as a company, but also the people that live in their districts, the people that vote for them, really appreciate them stepping out on an issue that maybe, whether it's controversial or just new, I do think is incredibly important. It's something, we used to host, and this is actually back when I was at Lyft, and we haven't been able to do it since I've been at DoorDash because I started remotely, but postcard writing parties to legislators, which seems kind of old fashioned, but I loved it because it was a great way to engage stakeholders. We'd buy everyone pizza and we'd sit in a room and we'd write thank you letters to legislators together. And I think it was a really powerful tool, something really simple, but easy to do. So hopefully when the pandemic's over, we can start doing that kind of stuff again.
I agree with you, Sarah, and it keeps those stakeholders at the local level engaged in their actions. Absolutely. I just want to be cognizant of our time. We have about 7 minutes left, and I want to make sure that each of you have an opportunity to give your best words of wisdom there. But one of the last questions that I'd like to ask you, because we've talked about all successful things that we can do, but certainly there has been a time when you've had a challenge, and it's been a challenge that maybe you were not able to overcome, but you moved past that. So Sarah, let's start with you. A challenge with DoorDash, Lyft, wherever you see your challenges. And then there's a second part to this. Did you, in that challenge, whether you were able to get through it or not, engage another lobbyist to help you with your challenge?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we've faced a ton of challenges as an industry in my time, both at Lyft and at DoorDash, but all challenges that have been, I mean, in my opinion, really, really exciting and fun. And we've had great allies in various state legislatures and city councils and at the federal level as well to help us overcome those challenges. I think, and I feel like I keep saying the same thing, but I think it's important. I think often one of the biggest challenges is people, whether it's stakeholders or legislators, really not understanding how an issue directly relates to them, which is usually honestly not their problem. It's usually our problem in the way that we're communicating our issues. So I think it goes to that idea of how you're messaging, but also how you're making sure things relate. I think that's been a big problem that I've seen at the early stages. I joined Lyft at a relatively early stage, joined DoorDash still sort of in an earlier stage, at least in the policy realm. And I think one of the solutions that we actually found is just really smart hiring, the way that we structure our teams. We recently hired a head of research at DoorDash, and we had a head of research at Lyft. This person is fully dedicated policy research, I should clarify. This person is fully dedicated to looking at our data, aggregating all of our data internally, and looking at numbers. You know, what are the demographics of the users of our platform, you know, that they're voluntarily willing to share. We do surveys and things like that to collect voluntary data from various stakeholders on our platform. You know, what percentage of our businesses are doing business in a certain district, getting really specific at the district level. And I'm just a messenger. I can't take credit for any of that kind of information. I think the head of digital of research is just really brilliant, and she's been a great hire. But I think that's been a really awesome solution to a problem of how do we communicate and how do we show numbers and stats. And then we also have been using digital tools to figure out how to complement stats with stories and anecdotes. I think I mentioned some of the tools we use, but we started using a new tool called Countable, which is sort of creates this advocacy site that allows people to upload content. So you could upload a selfie video talking about an issue. You can write a little testimonial and it gets featured in sort of a nicely packaged way. I think those are some of the solutions that we found to making sure that legislators and other stakeholders really see personally why an issue relates to them. Because I think that's one of the biggest challenges we face is, why would I care about this legislation? I really don't see how it directly impacts me. And so I think those solutions have been fairly helpful.
Thank you. I agree with you. Education is really key. And Joe, you actually said that when you first came on. We were talking about educating on an issue. And I just want to, again, take a 30-second or 10-second PSA. While Sarah was talking about the resources and their hires and the data and such, you as small businesses already have that at your fingertips with CBIA. They have a great research team with your local chambers again, and with your university systems. Connecticut is blessed with a plethora of university systems and young interns, graduate students who would gladly help do that data work for you. So you don't sweat when you hear Sarah explaining what they did, because DoorDash can do one thing, but always anything that any of these three panelists are talking about can be modified down to work for you. So Joe, talk about that education piece, your challenge, and how you got through that.
Challenge, no matter what the policy is to in an intensely competitive world where you're trying to occupy some small part of the 6 inches between people's ears and then get them to do something about it. I'm talking about the retirees we mobilize, or our employees, or if it's a tax issue, mobilizing our clients, our customers. Creating the narrative that then leads that person, he or she, to take action and to do so in a very efficient way. Why he or she used to be, and hopefully will again, is on the sidelines of their daughter's soccer practice when all this other information is competing for their attention. It's really like threading a needle these days. So a lot of the way we do it is through research. Incredible commercial for thoughtful research that ties consumers to thoughtful policymakers that are both pro-consumer and pro-business, but and it's not a silver bullet. It is a all of the above approach when it comes to trying to get that, compete for and actually get that person, that impacted consumer, to take some action and contact his or her lawmaker.
See, there you go, that mute button. There are a lot of people probably would like to have me muted for longer periods of time than I want to be muted. Kelly, challenge and suggestion?
Sure. I guess, you know, I've shared some examples of getting around challenges, but I would just mention that there were definitely times in my, you know, when I was doing direct grassroots and what I've seen from other teams where you don't get around the challenge and you have to wait. So there are times, for example, you know, there was a bill we were working on in Alaska and a couple legislators, there was nothing we could do to get them to pass that bill. And we continue to build up our, you know, grassroots reach. We worked with other legislators to get them on board. We got the public on board, and we had to wait till those legislators weren't in office anymore. And it took 2-3 years. They eventually moved on. They, you know, timed out, or they didn't win, or they left, and the bill passed. So I think really knowing, you know, that sometimes it is a little bit more of a marathon than a sprint to get things passed at the state level. You just is something that you know need to understand. So it's doing everything else you can to have those tools in place so that your story is being told in this effective way where you're combining personal touches, you're combining data, you're making sure that this issue is fresh, but you might have to wait until, you know, the time is right to pass it. Or, you know, in other examples where stuff has just been stalled, you've done everything creatively, nothing's moving forward. And then there's a circumstance change. Like the pandemic is a dramatic example, but, you know, it's an easy example. So, you know, for example, one of our members is the Distilled Spirits Council, and their cocktails to go, they're now using that to make cocktails to go permanent. They're changing taxes around alcohol. You know, these were issues they have worked on for a long time, and now the moment came where that issue mattered. So I would just encourage everyone to be consistent and patient, and it really is worth it, because when that change happens, it really makes a big difference. And that's a great thing I love about state government relations. It's contagious. So if you succeed in your state, you may help other states succeed, and you're helping your industry across the country. So, you know, just stick with it.
And you are right, Kelly. A lot of successes in Connecticut have been mimicked by other states. I'm going to circle around one piece of advice, just your one tool that you would give to everyone. If you were on an island by yourself and you could take this, what is it? Joe, go.
Oh, that's tough. I love.
I'll mute you. I'll go to somebody else now.
Oh, that's right. As Sarah said, the old-fashioned letter writing campaign and thank yous. That's my. It's a fail-safe, and it always works.
Sarah?
Yeah, I think issues are only, as you know, your campaigns are only as good as they are human and personal. And so making sure that the outreach is really personalized and sort of focusing on individual stories is really important.
And Kelly?
Yes, I echo Sarah's, can you hear me? Okay, I echo Sarah's comments about personalized and stories, but I would say social media. I feel like we haven't talked about that. But social media as a research tool, so you can find out what your legislators care about. As a tool for relationship building, you can do photos and videos, and you can tag them. You can help them be seen as members of the community. I would say an effective social media, you know, presence, which, by the way, doesn't include posting crazy things, you know, so that your whole social media is reputable and you can build that trust. But I would say social media is a really great tool now more than ever.
So yes, all great advice. And I want to thank all three of you. I think that what you did for our attendees and giving them some valuable suggestions and advice on how to advocate, because advocacy for yourself, for your business is very important. I do want to point out to our small businesses, if your business is in one town, you have a state delegation that you can talk to about your business. And if you live in another town, you have your personal delegation. So it's a twofer when you talk about advocacy there. It has been a pleasure to moderate with the three of you. I wish you success in your public relations. I know it's not an easy job. To our small businesses, I would say you heard some great advice. Kelly told you patience is wonderful. Joe told you perseverance to move forward. And Sarah talked about being proactive, along with many other things. Those are the three things I take from here. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank CBIA for having us, and our Chamber of Council of Execs for the Chamber, and all the Chamber members on this call, and all the members who are members of chambers around this state who help our small businesses do exactly what we were just trying to help them do here. And I'm back to you, Eric. If you're on the call, I think we've wrapped up.
Well, thank you so much, Pam. Really appreciate that. And thank you to everyone who is sticking around for our legislative update. I'm really excited to talk to you about many of the items that the CBIA lobbying team and others are working so hard on this year. But first, I just want to make one quick comment. You know, I know this is going to sound a little bit contradictory, but somehow everything is both the same and very different this year. Now, the differences are obvious. 1 year ago, Business Day was one of the last in-person events at the Legislative Office Building. And today, here we are virtual. And as you know, the Legislative Office Building is closed to the public. My team and I cannot be there advocating on your behalf as we normally do. We are doing all that we can remotely, and we have adjusted our resources accordingly, but it is infinitely more difficult to get things done this year. Unlike in the past, we can't just stop lawmakers in the hall and sort of force them to listen to us and let them, make them hear us out on an issue, but we're doing everything we can in this new world. And despite that, somehow it is all the same too. The same group of legislators are pushing the same harmful measures. They ignore the fact that so many of our state's businesses were shut down for many months this past year. It doesn't really concern them how many businesses' doors will never reopen. The ones lucky enough to reopen incurred great expense to make employees and customers safe. We have 122,000 less jobs in the state, and a majority of businesses are unlikely to make any profits this year. And still, the loudest voices in the room push bills that will truly prevent us from rebuilding Connecticut the way that we all hope to do. So with that, let me get into some of the items. Now, I know you have all received a list of bills that CBIA and others are tracking. Some of the things that are harmful that we are really concerned about. For example, HB 6537. This would take the existing paid sick leave law in the state that currently applies to businesses with 50 or more employees and apply it to all businesses and all employees across the state. This would have a significant impact on struggling business, particularly small businesses. HB 6536 would impose financial penalties on employers that fail to fully reimburse employees for all expenses that the employee deems necessary to working from home. And while we certainly agree that there should be conversations about what should be reimbursed and what shouldn't be, this does not have any sort of means of determining or making that decision on what is necessary. And in fact, it encourages employees to submit expenditures after the fact, leading to conflicts between employers and employees. SB 906, for those of you who use non-compete agreements, would invalidate all of those agreements relating to hourly employees after July 1 of this year. And it would also invalidate them for any employee who earns less than 3 times the minimum wage, which would be $93,000 at a $15 minimum wage. Well, we certainly agree that non-compete agreements are not appropriate in every industry, but it should not just be a blanket invalidations the way that SB 906 calls for. SB 660, another bill, this would deal with workers' comp and go back in time almost to when we gave benefits for mental injuries that did not accompany a physical injury. This would have a massive cost increase on our workers' compensation system, and which is exactly why we did away with these type of injuries many years ago. Now, there's certainly a place for these in some of our protective services, but not for just every worker in the state. Again, this would have significant cost increases. SB 658 would require businesses to recall employees that were laid off during the pandemic in order of seniority, completely ignoring the fact other factors like productivity, skill level, attendance, and disciplinary history. The list of bad bills goes on, and of course you can find all of those at cbia.com. There are also a lot of good bills out there that deserve support. For example, SB 1006, this provides an alternative approach to addressing healthcare costs from those that you've heard about today, establishing benchmark programs, a reinsurance fund, and increased transparency around the state municipal plan, all things that we need and all things that would have a real impact on healthcare costs, something that I've seen so many in comments in the chat and Q&A functions this morning about. It was also mentioned HB 6445, which would allow the Department of Consumer Protection to issue professional licenses to spouses of military members who move into the state. This is something we should be doing for our military families. And it makes a lot of sense, especially when there is a need for skilled workers in this state. HB 6435 and SB 933 would both expand the manufacturing apprenticeship tax credit to smaller manufacturers, something that we have been pushing for a long time. Again, full list of bills can be found at cbia.com, and I realize that we are running very short on our scheduled time. So just going back to it, I started this legislative update, even if it was relatively brief, talking about how everything is both different and the same this year, and how the world has drastically changed, but the loudest voices are acting like it's anti-business as usual. We do not have to let it be the same. You have heard from a group of legislators early this morning that have been our allies up at the Capitol. They need and others need to hear from you. In fact, they said they wanted to hear from you. It gives them the support they need to challenge their peers. You've also heard this morning the importance of grassroots advocacy and the best practice methods of contacting public officials. We have given you all the tools you need to be your own advocate. We need to do something different this year. Our voices need to be heard. I'm not asking you to leave here today and be the loudest voice. I'm simply asking you to be one voice among many. So wherever you are watching this right now and watching this event, I ask you to please open up a new tab on your internet browser or pull out your cell phone. Now on your phone, in a new text message, text the word BizDay21. That's BIZDAY and the number 21 to 52886. Again, text BizDay21 to 52886. We'll also be dropping the link in our phone to action page and the texting instructions I just gave you in the chat box within Zoom. Phone to action can connect you directly and immediately to your state lawmakers through email or Twitter. We've already created a message for you to send to legislators, but as you've heard this morning, it's really best to write your own message. Tell them what legislation concerns you or what bills that you hope they will vote yes on. Tell them what issues are the most important to your business, to your employees, and for rebuilding Connecticut after this pandemic. As you start reaching out to your legislators, you're going to see on the display on our Business Day Live map, each pin that drops down that shows a business leader that has reached out to their legislator in real time. Let's cover the entire state in the next few minutes to show the legislature just how far and wide CBIA's membership and our chambers of commerce cover this great state. So just give that a few seconds. Hopefully more of you will continue to text, again, BIZDAY to 52886, or again, access it through your phone, your tablet, or your desktop computer. And again, I'm just asking you to speak up on any one of the bills that either we talked about or they're on the program that we distributed earlier this week. I don't care which one you pick, just pick one. Tell your lawmakers why you support this or why you oppose it. We have a real opportunity to turn this state around. Working together, we are louder than those calling for more of the same old harmful policies. We thank you so much for your help because we certainly need it this year. And with that, our Business Day activities are coming to a close, but hopefully your advocacy is just getting started. So I want to thank so much AT&T for their sponsorship, as well as DoorDash for all of their help. And thank you, Governor Lamont and all our panelists. But most of all, thank each and every one of the businesses attending today. We need you now more than ever to help rebuild Connecticut. So again, thank you for attending today. We truly appreciate it.